going to die!
Hello everybody and welcome to Deep Dive Zone, a Sonic the Hedgehog rewatch podcast for fans of all shapes and sizes. This is episode 2 of our coverage of SatAM. It's very different from Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog in a way that I appreciate.
It's a much more interesting show.
We're going to be starting off tonight with episode 5, Super Sonic, which sounds like it should get you excited, but nope. While on a mission to the big city to replace Nicole's malfunctioning microchip, Sonic and Sally encounter the Guardian, a mysterious cloaked figure who guards a dormant wizard named Lezar and his computer of evil spells. Both Robotnik and Sonic believe the spells could be useful, and set out to elude the watchful Guardian and steal Lezar's computer. While Sonic struggles to avoid the Guardian's many traps, Robotnik reaches Lezar's resting place and escapes with computer in tow. I was hoping they'd start this episode still thinking Robotnik was dead from last time, but they didn't.
No.
The Guardian of Rem Lezar, he looks like, he looks a little bit like Dr. Doom.
I suppose, sort of.
I guess a little bit, but it's not a mask, right?
Well, he's a robot, right?
Yeah,
Is he a robot?
I'm pretty sure they're a robot.
Okay.
Because that transitions nicely into spellbook computer or something.
Right.
So they've got, like, not just a straight magician, but they've got, like, this technomancer thing going about.
Right.
Because they've got, like...
that was interesting.
Yeah, they've got, like, this belt that's obviously got, like, buttons and switches that they use to cast spells, and the robot servant. And yeah, that I like that. That fits the vibe of SatAM.
It really does. It was cool. Actually, it made me think of, I think it's an Isaac Asimov quote, a sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
It's a good quote, yeah. Very relevant.
Yeah.
Well, and it's like, it's fitting for series like Sonic, which is, you know, very sci-fi entwined, but it's very weird considering that we'll get an actual Dark Wizard later on in the series.
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
To be fair, the Sonic series itself doesn't stray away from, like, demons and elder gods.
Yeah, fair enough.
No, I don't think magic is out of place, but I appreciate the inclusion of a technomancer as well.
Right, well, I think, at least in SatAM, having something like a technomancer makes a lot more sense from a, like, lore standpoint.
I'll say this wizard, he talks like Yoda a little bit.
Yeah, kind of.
There are a number of characters throughout fiction that sort of talk like that. It's sort of a sign of a character being from another time, the way they speak strangely.
Yeah.
Well, and it's like his cyber magic, you know, is not really like the Force, but it makes you think of it like that since, you know, Jedi they have, you know, the Spirit Force or whatever, but then they also use electronic lightsabers.
I hadn't really thought of that, but yeah I suppose so. And speaking
the magic computer
of
kind of looks like a lightsaber handle.
It's got a crystal, so that's on point. Speaking of that computer, well, first of all, Robotnik's initial reaction to it is just great when he's like, Snively, list off what it can do, and it's like, amulets, banishments, bones, cages, curses, and Robotnik's response is, what a lovely variety.
That was so great.
He loves it.
Uh-huh.
He's just so excited to be evil.
Once again, Robotnik just proving he's the best character.
Truth. But then this thing is like so ridiculously overpowered. It can like teleport in anyone Robotnik wishes and then mind control them instantly. And like, seriously, it's ridiculous. The only reason Sonic beat him is because he just left it lying in the middle of the room unguarded. Like, it's not often.
Adventures of Sonic moments.
Yeah, it's not often this show is like that, but this was a moment like that.
I was actually going to say, even though that is Adventures of Sonic moment, this episode ends with a very not Adventures of Sonic moment, because when they get the magic spells back and they give them back to the wizard, I was like, well, they're just wandering into his cave again, which is right outside Robotropolis, so, you know, what's going to stop Robotnik from stealing it again? And then he magics the cave away, and it's like, thank you!
Yeah.
It's such a basic thing that Adventures failed to do so often.
Yeah, no, that was
True.
nice that they actually wrote into, here's how we're going to prevent Robotnik from doing this, from a writer's standpoint, at least.
Back to the start of the episode, it opens up with Nicole malfunctioning for some reason, and so there's a brief little mission to steal a microchip, which happens to be the exact kind of microchip Nicole needs, which makes me theorize that Nicole was originally built off of stolen parts in the first place, which...
That makes sense.
In turn, so the Forbidden Zone, right? Robotnik's like, what's that? And Snively looks it up on some sort of database Robotnik has. Then the freedom fighters do the same from Nicole. So Nicole's database must be sourced off of Robotnik's, which in turn was probably sourced off of some records from Mobotropolis before he took over. So that explains that finally.
Well, actually, it's funny you mention that because Ben Hurst, the lead writer for the show, he talked a little bit about the planned, things for season 3 that he had wanted to do after the show got canceled. And one of the plot lines that they wanted to have was about Nicole originally having been a real girl, so to speak. And I think it was Robotnik who basically put her inside a computer. So if that's his technology, then that makes perfect sense.
Oh.
Yeah. It's interesting that this episode revolves around, rather than a test of, pure spirit, it's a test of pure evil. The only one worthy of Lezar's dark magic is one who is as evil as Robotnik.
Which says questionable things about the magic itself, but I guess he then doesn't help them win the war, so I guess that's where his priorities lie.
Right.
I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that, but it's stated that Lezar was, evil and then he turned good because he dreamed about, I don't know, rainbows or something. And he decided to not be evil anymore. But, the magic is explicitly evil, and so he has to, protect it. And that's
right. He keeps it. Exactly.
So is it maybe that the magic can only be used for evil purposes, and thus all they can do is keep it away from Robotnik?
And to be fair,
Probably.
those spells that Snively listed off, just by name alone, sound evil.
Yeah, they're probably all explicitly for causing damage, sort of a thing.
Right. It's not something like, oh, there's a healing spell. This is all maiming and destruction.
So this was secretly the gun control episode.
Right.
Yeah, I suppose that makes sense.
I like the way they execute the test of pure evil, which is when Robotnik is like, oh, only I can go in alone? Nah, I'm going to send in our swap-bot ahead of me just to test that, and then it gets absolutely destroyed. But as it is, Robotnik isn't, surprised or scared or anything. No, he's, watching on with intrigue as the swap-bot is torn apart. I love it.
Yeah, he's curious about it.
He's just got a sadist streak in general. He even likes seeing his own things get destroyed, as long as Sonic's not the one having fun doing it.
That's true.
Yep.
Episode 6, Sonic Racer. Sonic's lured into an obvious trap when a frustrated Robotnik decides to appeal to the Hedgehog's ego and announce a race to determine the fastest on Mobius. Sonic decides to join the race despite Sally's objections that she needs him on a mission to take out Robotnik's power generators. The Freedom Fighters decide to launch this mission on the day of the big race, figuring Robotnik will be too preoccupied. The race turns out to be much tougher than Sonic expected when he sees his competition, a sleek four-legged robot called the Speedbot, who is not only out to beat Sonic but capture him as well. Robotnik builds a fast robot, but it's not a Metal Sonic. It's just a big cheetah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, I don't know. I feel like Cheetah makes more sense than just copying Sonic.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I get you want to see Metal, because Metal is cool, but...
He can stab you with his fingers.
He can stab you with his fingers, but...
But the cheetah can pick you up with suction cups.
That was weird.
Yeah, it's weird because they're like, hey, let's demonstrate our robot's new ability. And it picks Sonic up, throws him up in the air, and just keeps going. And it's like, that's it?
Well, yeah, my question to that was, how's that going to stop Sonic? He'll just land and get back to running.
Maybe Sonic has fall damage in this show.
Maybe Sonic has a fear of heights.
I don't think so.
Well, to be fair, a fear of heights wouldn't stop him anyway, because, the heights doesn't last very long.
I think most characters probably wouldn't be able to land and avoid the fall damage explicitly, but Sonic is.
Sonic's cool.
That's right, he's too cool.
He's too cool to die from fall damage.
He has main character powers.
Exactly, he has plot armor.
That's okay, though, because I think at this point, Robotnik doesn't really have a good grasp of what all Sonic can do. It seems like he hasn't really been taking him too seriously. Near the beginning of the episode, he just says to Snively, those freedom fighters are beginning to concern me, which demonstrates that basically he wasn't really thinking too hard about it, and is only now starting to take them seriously.
I wasn't even trying. I did that on purpose. Speaking of quotable moments in this episode, this is the one that everybody reposts, and memes on with Bunny, where she uses the phrase,
"Nasty as a one-eyed snake, sugar."
Yes, I specifically remembered that. My first thought was that a penis joke?
I don't know what else it could be. I've looked it up. I don't think there's anything else that it could be a euphemism for. But
As far as I know, that's what one-eyed snake means.
A, why did you write that in your show? And B, why did you have Bunny say it to Tails? Tails is an
Yeah.
impressionable boy. You can't just go around making cock humor.
I don't know why that got me.
Bunny is actually like a problem child in this episode, because there's an animation mistake about 9 minutes in where Sally talks with Bunny's voice.
This is too weak.
So it's like
Oh,
now
I didn't
she's
even notice
shirking her
that.
duties for occupying the animation budget.
I didn't even notice that.
On a completely different note, this episode shows that for the first time that Snively, more than just being a helper and really fearful, can actually make his own competent plans, because he comes up with the whole plot to trick Sonic into joining a race.
Right.
And it also
And then
shows that even though he is working for Robotnik out of fear, he also enjoys being evil.
That is true. And there are a few moments in the episode, short-lived, where Robotnik and Snively are actually laughing maniacally together.
I know, I like evil friends.
One thing was I liked that when things went sideways on the Freedom Fighters' plan, and Sally called for Sonic, he didn't try to finish the race and then go and help. He immediately just ditched the race.
Yeah,
Yeah.
shows some actual moral character, because it's
Exactly. He cares more about his friends than actually, showing off.
and that is, I feel like that is like an actual conflict that's been in Sonic shows, but I don't remember which.
Mm.
Yeah, that is a nice thing, because the whole trick is a play on his ego, and it's nice to show that there is some sort of limit. He would have done fine even if he played the race straight,
Right.
but
Doesn't matter. There's more important things.
yeah.
I have
exactly.
to. I have to like check the other like Sonic cartoon race episodes and see what he does in those, because every Sonic cartoon has a race episode, but it's never against any of his rivals from the games, which is very funny. I guess the Sonic Boom race episode, he's against some of his own friends, so that kind of counts.
The weird thing, though, is that Sonic shows up to the race because he can't help but prove he's the fastest, and yet he tries to wear, like, a disguise, which
That was
defeats
weird.
the purpose.
I don't understand why he felt the need to do that.
Well, does he... I don't remember. Does he take it off the moment that he gets there?
He takes it off right before the race.
Okay, so maybe that's just to sneak through Robotropolis to get in. But then it's
I would
also
assume you
like...
wouldn't need to.
Well, I don't think it would work, because in Robotropolis, if you're not one of the robots, they get you.
Right, if you're biological.
Yeah, they have heat sensors. I just have to note that once again, the Power Ring does whatever the plot needs it to. Apparently, it's also super strong, enough to stop gears.
That was not the use I was expecting of the Power Ring, to be honest.
More gold, more mass. That's the power of the Home Depot.
Actually, yeah, so if they're
Yeah.
made out of gold's like super malleable.
That's true. I hadn't thought about that actually. That should actually be worse. And
Yeah, the gears would just squish it.
I mean, they're probably not just straight gold.
Well, I would assume not, but like we don't know what material they're made out of, so we can only assume a straight gold.
They're made out of the Force.
That would explain it better, honestly.
I do like the moment where they knock out Robotnik's power. It's weird that they treat it as a big victory, even though it obviously won't stick, but I like the moment where they knock out his power, and then he turns on his glow-in-the-dark laser eyes.
Oh, that was really cool.
Yeah.
That was so cool.
It's like, in Adventures of Sonic, they would contradict, like, human logic in order to make something wacky happen. In this show,
Right.
they contradict logic and sensibility just to make Robotnik scary. And I am
know,
here for it.
Yes, it is
It's-
great.
So awesome.
Episode 7, Hooked on Sonics. Sonic conquers Robotnik's latest evil, a vehicle designed to locate and destroy living tissue matter. Upon Sonic's return, the Freedom Fighters honor him with a victory party. Envious of the attention Sonic's getting, especially from Sally, Antoine sets out on his own solo mission to prove his worth by capturing Robotnik.
On the topic of the Shredder, surprisingly creepy creation of Robotniks with the tendrils and the absorbing life force. It's like really scary, actually.
This episode specifically really gave me vibes of I want to say like early 90s anime.
It has a little bit of that, and not just because of the tentacles, but also because of this sort of... They've got a weird tone, and it's like, the background coloring reminds me of, like, some of the backgrounds that I've seen in, like, Fist of the North Star.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of Pokemon no Ken.
So I'm always appreciative of the show taking things seriously, even if there are jokes. Sonic doesn't take things seriously because that's his character. In actuality, it's not just the show being stupid for no reason. When Sonic thrashes the Shredder and Snively reports this to Robotnik, then he's like, "How can a puny hedgehog destroy a 250-ton machine?" And I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't think about it, but from Robotnik's perspective, that is truly absurd.
I'm trying to think of a historical analogy that I could make without being overly serious and offensive, but it's also war is too much. But yeah, you have this world dictator who is being stopped by essentially a pack of children over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so when I think about that, that's a very sensible reaction. Oftentimes he gets angry at the slightest failure, but that's a justified moment.
That is a very justified moment.
As a kid, the limited number of episodes of this show that I was able to see, it didn't include this one, but it did include actually the last one. So I don't know how I watched that, but it must have been right when we first got Netflix or something like that. But I was always weirded out as a kid, oh my gosh, Sally and Sonic kissed in the finale or whatever. And then I'm now realizing that they just make out a lot in this show.
Oh, that kiss was kind of uncomfortable.
I guess they're just closer in this continuity. It threw me off the first time. Upon rewatching, I forgot about it, but yes, now that you bring it up.
Well, it's like, we have this whole minor love triangle thing going on between Sonic, Sally, and Antoine, but it's really weird because it's kind of one-sided because Antoine is jealous because they're just macking on each other's faces all the time, but then when you actually press any of them, it's like, oh no, technically we're not dating. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's weird. I can't say it's unbelievable in any regard.
No, they're dumb teenagers. I get it.
Exactly.
That is fair.
But yeah, it's fair, but it's not fair in universe. I can understand Antoine's annoyance. That said, I still can't forgive him completely. Really dumb reason to be like, oh, I'm going to go adventure and capture Robotnik on my own. On the other hand, I do admire that he actually does his absolute best. This is Antoine's best episode, I would have to say.
This Coyote boy is a bit of a paradox, because on the one hand, I do want to see him be more take charge. On the other hand, he has to pay attention to what he's doing. Last episode he was okay. Last episode he actively volunteered to help out, and even though he still caused problems, it wasn't really his fault per se. It just was the way that things worked out. Yeah. In this case, he formulates this whole plan, and it technically does work for a second, and it only makes me think that if he had asked the other people to help him out with this, could they have actually done it?
I don't think so, because I'm pretty darn sure the only reason that Robotnik played along with this whole scheme is that he knew Antoine was on his own, and he had a trump card up his sleeve the whole time, because for the benefit of the audience, Antoine throws Robotnik in a pit, and then he's like, and what are you going to do with me? And then he's like, I'm going to turn you in and then win the heart of the princess. And then he's like, a nice dream. But dreams are meant to be broken. And then he just jets up with hover boots. So I don't think he would have let himself be so vulnerable if it had been more than just Antoine.
Is this the first time that he uses the rocket shoes?
Yes, I think so.
I think Robotnik being able to fly and just shoot lasers is kind of rad, actually. It's weird that he doesn't, directly engage people more often. Not weird because he's lazy and that makes sense, but...
No, yeah, it makes sense that he wouldn't, but it also makes sense that he would have plans just in case.
Yeah, I guess what I mean is, I would expect that, when you can do something cool like that, if I were one of the writers, I'd want to use that more.
Sure.
But yeah, so Antoine is captured, and then Robotnik uses a power ring to... It tracks things moving at supersonic speed, which I think is a very reasonable way to explain how it can just target Sonic.
It's an aimbot.
Yeah. So then he can't run super fast, which is a really bad thing. And it leads to a moment when he tries to rescue Antoine. And he does succeed because Robotnik goes off to, destroy the forest. That's usually his goal in a lot of episodes. Oh, yeah, with the Shredder, because he rebuilds the Shredder. And he rescues Antoine before going back to stop Robotnik. And I appreciate that for once. Okay, so earlier in the episode, I'm totally on Antoine's side, kind of, because there's literally a line when Sonic's like, "Oh, Antoine, the watch is over. You can go get your ugly sleep." Too cool, too cool. And I'm like, you're a freaking jerk. Shut up.
On the one hand, it's like, I find Antoine to be a bit of a living joke. On the other hand, all of the characters kind of treat him like one too, and that makes you want to be sympathetic toward him.
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
But at least, for once, maybe in the whole show, when Sonic rescues Antoine, Antoine's like, "Oh, I'm sorry I screwed this up. Now Robotnik's got a power ring, and he's gonna, like, destroy the forest, and we gotta stop him." And Sonic's actually like, "It's cool, Antoine. We'll figure it out." And I'm like, good, for once.
Yeah, I do like, any moment I can get with the two of them kind of being bros, and we'll get more in about 15 years of production time.
Uh-huh. But then, in the best moment, for many reasons, of Antoine, we get, so Sonic and Antoine go off, and Robotnik's got, like, a big old setup with the shredder and the supersonic sniping thing, and a whole bunch of SWAT bots, and Sonic runs in, but then he gets cornered, and we get this wonderful line, probably my favorite Robotnik line in the show, honestly, when Sonic's cornered, and Robotnik is like, "I've always wanted to roboticize you, hedgehog, but I've changed my mind. Laser rifle."
Pulls out, just grabs a gun.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't outright say it, but that is exactly what he means.
Oh, yeah. No, he's like, "I've grown tired of chasing you just to roboticize you. I'm just going to shoot you now."
That's
Absolutely
like,
glorious.
it's like the inverse of that Gohan moment that everybody loves from the Boo arc, where he's like, "So, have you come to fight? No. I'm here to kill you." It's exactly like that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, kind of.
But so then they're cornered, and yikes, those stakes. But then Antoine has an actual moment of heroism, because he's like, "Wait a minute, I remember the power ring was taken and put in this machine," which Sonic doesn't know because he wasn't there, so he's actually using what he's seen himself. So he grabs a power ring, gives it to Sonic, and uses it to save the day, which is fine. That's not as like, "Oh, I'm just pulling out a power ring out of nowhere." It was already there. It was established, so it doesn't feel like a cheat.
It's a Chekhov's gun.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it
Chekhov's ring.
And so, even if he made the mess in the first place, I think Antoine makes up for it, and it's the closest you really get in the show to him actually being, a legitimate part of the team.
There's a couple moments later on, but yeah. Bruce, you ready to take a drink of Chekhov's peach rings?
I just have some random side notes besides those major points. We talked about this before, but in this episode, Sonic outright states that the Power Rings' power don't last long, so you can't stockpile them.
Right.
That discussion. And then Robotropolis has robotic rats, which on the one hand you can look at that's cute. You've got a robot city, it's got robot rats. On the other hand, there's a terrifying implication beneath that, which is that Robotnik is so set in his ability in his quest to eliminate all life, even the smallest life form will not be spared from robotization. How do you say that?
Episode 8, Harmonic Sonic. When Robotnik launches a spy orb that will uncover the Freedom Fighters' knothole location, Sonic and Rotor launch themselves up to the orbiting sphere aboard a homemade rocket powered by Robotnik's discarded booster engine that fell in the Great Forest. Once on the heavily guarded sphere, Sonic and Rotor must find the spy sensors before they locate Knothole. So just real quick, I want to talk about, I don't know if there's any inaccuracies in this description, but there is one big inaccuracy across all of them, which is that whenever Rotor is a part of the episode, for some reason the description refers to him as Robot. So I changed all those myself.
Good job.
Thank you.
Probably autocorrect or something, or that intern is just really off their game.
Maybe they're the same one doing the Sonic Frontiers marketing.
Oh no, there's a topical joke.
Ooh.
Except this episode is going to come out way later, so we might have a lot more information about the game by then. So the spy orb, it's like an almost Death Egg. They even do like a Star Wars trench run when they're flying to it. Mm-hmm. I guess the main difference is that they're not technically in space. They're just, I guess, in high orbit.
Right, yeah, I suppose that's true.
I guess so.
But yeah, the Sky Spy. The show always delivers with the atmosphere. when Rotor and Sonic step out, it really does feel like a cold, metallic, deserted sort of environment at first before they actually encounter the denizens.
Yeah.
But it's a good opening moment to the new setting.
The denizens themselves are weird because they're Robotnik robots, but these ones have like personalities and voices and music preferences.
Okay, so yes, let's get into it. The robot cantina is so out of place. Literally, that whole sequence feels out of Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. Get it out of my SatAM.
Yeah, and you say cantina because it does give me like a Star Wars like bar vibe.
Well, we were talking about that earlier, so I thought I might as well. But yeah, the robots, they have personalities, as you said. They're like wrestling, and there's like drinks, and there's music, and they seem like goofy badniks with personalities during that whole sequence. And Sonic even banters with some of them. Very bizarre, because literally as soon as the sequence ends, they go back to like the regular, serious robots out to get you sort of thing. There's a purple weird bug robot thingy. All these badniks are like roboticized citizens, so they're not just like regular standard issue swap bots. They're based off of weird creatures from Mobius, I guess. But anyway, that robot literally appears in the bar. But then when they see it afterwards, instead of being like, hey, intruders, stop, or something stupid like that, no, it like screeches and like is freaky and, just attacks Rotor and like almost gets him, but then Sonic helps him.
Is that the claw robot?
Yeah, the one where they spring load its claws.
Yeah, so why do you put buttons on its claw that make them permanently grip? They just attach him to a bar.
Also, spring-loaded claws don't make sense in the first place.
That's about in line with the robot with the off switch on its leg.
Fair.
I'll forgive it because, as usual, it's taken seriously. They're not like, oh wow, it's like, haha, stupid robot. Now you're stuck. I mean, I think they. Well,
the common element between both of these is Rotor. He just has an aura of bad robot design that follows him around.
I guess
that'll come into play in a later episode. Now that I'm thinking about it.
But yeah, I hate that sequence in the bar. Get it out. Why did they put it here? It's like this show has goofy moments, but it's just so out of place.
Yeah, it's surreal.
It's like they brought in writers from Adventures or something. Or I don't know if they are repeating writers. They thought they were writing for the Adventures anyway.
Well, but it's weird because it's only for that scene.
Yeah, like I said, it's literally just for that scene, and then right afterwards it goes back to serious mode.
If it had to be anything, I'd have to say that it's like maybe this episode had a couple writers working on it, and just the co-writer took over for a scene and didn't have his work looked over by anybody. Something like that.
I guess. Weird point. I guess it makes sense, but there's a green tentacle creature that has like drool, and it grabs Sonic and Rotor. It doesn't actually appear to be a robot. It just looks like it's some alien that just happens to also be there.
I'm glad I'm not the only person here that had that thought. It just looks like an alien or a weird Mobian monster.
Yeah, which isn't impossible, and maybe I don't know if that was on purpose though. Or it's just a really unclear robot.
If it's a monster, maybe Robotnik brought it up there on purpose.
Yeah, it's the same deal as the one from the prison in the other episode, where it's like, in that case, Sonic knew that it was a robot, but I wasn't quite sure how he knew. In this case, I don't know if it is a robot, but they don't treat it like it is one, so what makes the difference?
Yeah, well, that one was explicitly revealed. This one, they never make it explode, and there's no indication at all. Right. So
maybe this episode is just like built out of scrapped ideas for the Adventures of Sonic Space Colony episode.
Yeah, I was getting flashbacks to that. That one had a weird creature in it, although much more prominent than this one-off. I will say, usually the problems don't have super out-of-the-blue solutions, but in this episode, when the Sky Spy is going to like crash on Knothole, then Sully's like, wait a minute, Rotor, why don't we just use your super powerful magnet? And I'm like, wow, isn't that convenient?
Which is weird, because I think there's a different episode where they just find super powerful magnets, but it's later on, so...
I can't knock it too hard, though, because it is like a bonus last-minute extra thing that's going to happen anyway, so it's not really solving the main plot.
Well, and I mean, Crush 40 isn't here, so we can't have a big space battle to stop it from falling.
Yes. Sonic likes their big space stations.
I think it's just that Sonic has a very specific set of tropes that it pulls from, and then it just forgets to find new ones sometimes. I'll say, I was making fun of Rotor's bad robot design aura or whatever, and it actually does come up here at the end because he tries to build a hairstyler for Sonic, and it doesn't work at all.
Yeah.
I don't like the hairdo it gave Sonic.
Well, it reminds me there was an old Sonic Sprite comic where Sonic put hair gel in his hair to get the supersonic quills without being super, and it reminded me of that.
One random note, but I think a telling one that I have from earlier on Sonic is when they're flying up into space at first. We get a rare look at like a more forlorn side of Sonic as he comments on the view of Mobius, saying it's beautiful, and from this distance you can't tell that Robotnik has like destroyed everything.
Yeah, I mean, if it were me, that would be a spot of hope. If you can't tell from a distance, then maybe it can change. No, that's nothing. I'm sorry, I'm gonna shut up now.
Well, my point was that usually he doesn't get, down by anything. So that shows that it's probably more of a face than that's just his personality. I mean,
yeah,
I think he's mostly upbeat, but somewhere, yeah, he is hit by all this, which makes sense.
I'll say the most buried theme in SatAM and just the Freedom Fighter canon in general is the idea that these characters are still, underage teenagers and kids who have been kind of made to grow up by the circumstances they've been forced into.
Right, yeah.
And I don't think any media has really played into that a lot, mostly because Sonic still needs to be the strong hero, but when they have little glimmers of it, it's nice. Lets you know that they're still human despite not being humans.
Exactly. Yeah.
Episode 9, Sonic's Nightmare. When Sally uncovers Robotnik's plan to seed the clouds with toxic rain, they attempt a daring mission to sabotage the dirigible-like craft being transported by land vehicles. The mission fails when Sally, Bunny, and Antoine are captured and taken to an oil refinery island in the Great River. It's up to Sonic to not only sabotage Robotnik's cloud seeding, but rescue his friends as the island literally sinks beneath their feet. This is a really weird episode.
Is it? Well, there's one weird element, I guess.
Well, so Sonic's dream is what stands out the weirdest to me, is because it's brought up like 3 times, but it's just a generic nightmare. It doesn't directly relate to the plot of the episode, is what gets to me. And he just thinks of it at random points and, like, freezes up for no reason.
Yeah, so I'm like, wow, Sonic, you're getting, like, PTSD-level trauma from a simple nightmare for no reason. And, oh my god.
Metroid Other M moments.
So they try to play it off as, like, oh, he's traumatized for some reason. But they do it by repeating a stupid line, where were you when the brains were handed out, over and over. Like, that's supposed to be, like, wrecking his soul?
I know, it's like, I remember that line, from Sally, whatever episode it's in, and I think they even reference that in the comics, but it's like, is this supposed to be dire, or is it supposed to be funny? Because if you're trying to be funny with it and makes fun of Sonic for being this hung up over a bad dream, then it makes sense. But no, it's a legitimate plot fact in the episode that is extremely relevant and causes everybody to almost die.
They literally shorten it. They're like, where were you when the brains were handed out? Where were you when the brains were handed out? Brains, brains, brains. Like, what? Like, I can't believe that wasn't supposed to be silly, even though it's played completely straight.
Yeah, these are robots, not zombies yet. They have these fake SWAT-bot suits. How do they wear them?
Oh, no.
Yeah, that was so weird.
The proportions don't match at all.
So, I have to imagine that the legs act as stilts, like they're standing on something and that somehow works. But it doesn't really look like it.
But then that still means that each of them needs gorilla arms.
That's true.
I guess. I don't know, man.
They secretly channeled their inner Lanky Kong.
That's the most obvious bit, but then there's also the fact that you put on the helmet and instantly you get like a filter over your voice, so you sound like a SWAT bot.
Okay, but lots of media does that.
I mean,
true, but
that's not really that egregious.
Strange.
The very first Doctor Who story where they hide in a Dalek casing does that.
Yeah. Yes, it
Are you calling Ian Chesterton a liar, motherfucker?
No.
I don't know why I'm on this tangent. I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay, fair enough, I suppose. At the beginning, again, we got another strange moment from Sonic when they're like, oh, he's going to make toxic rain. And he's like, what's a little more toxic rain? All of Mobius is fuming with this stuff. Like, I don't usually see him so defeatist about things,
Yeah.
so it's an odd reaction.
Well, maybe it's that he thought of toxic rain as just like the kind of toxic rain that we have in the real world, where it's like you're not going to literally have your skin burn off, but it's still bad.
Sure.
Oh. Well, I mean, that probably... No, you're right, because it's literally to destroy the forest. Okay, yeah, true. I don't know. Robotnik is mostly a serious character in this show, but when he does make jokes, they're delivered in a serious way, which is great. When Sally is, like, calling him a chicken for not showing up, then he's like, I don't appreciate the slander of poor Cluck's species.
I appreciate that joke.
For the most part, Sonic's abilities are toned down in this show. He can't take out an entire legion of swap bots with a single spin unless he's got a power ring. But apparently in this show, he can still dig absurdly quickly, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, his defeat of Robotnik comes from him burrowing underground and just happening to find some mining equipment there. It's not that it wouldn't make sense to be there, but it's crazy that he finds it so easily. And he just uses it to beat Robotnik. That's a little Adventures of Sonic-y. Gotta watch yourself, show.
It is. This show has a few moments like that, unfortunately. It's not a perfect, flawless production.
0 out of 10.
So 0 out of 10. No. It's still good.
It is funny to me that comparing it to Adventures of Sonic is becoming our primary way of disparaging it.
Well, I can't think of a worse insult.
I mean, that is fair.
You can compare it to Sonic Underground.
I almost did that, but we haven't actually touched on that show yet, so I felt it was unfair.
Oh yeah, I guess we're technically still stuck in 1994 right now, so...
So, unlike Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, though, at least... Well, I mean, even Adventures had continuity here and there, but I think this show probably has more. I like that, so they're in, like, a oil plant or whatever you call that, where Robotnik's getting oil from under the ground, but the pipes are, like, broken at multiple points, so it's obviously in a state of disrepair, which, if you read into it, that actually makes sense, because a few episodes back, Chuck mentioned that Robotnik's oil supply is running low, so it would make sense that the place isn't really being used anymore, and so it's kind of been neglected. I think that's neat.
At the end of the episode, they do another thing that was like in the temple episode, where they again think that Robotnik is dead.
Yeah.
And again, it's not going to come up again.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That moment is a little strange. They did it twice. But at the very least, we do get another great moment from that, so Robotnik has like an escape pod from the blimp that has like a cloaking device that just turns him invisible. But apparently the escape pod is still damaged. And Snively is like, sir, we have to go back to base immediately. We're in a critical state. And he's like, no, Snively, I must destroy the hedgehog. And he's like struggling with himself to not just fire a missile and blow up Sonic. But then he actually can't do it. He presses the button. It doesn't work because it's too broken. But I love that moment.
Just that it's like despair and rage at the same time, just throwing everything away to just kill this one guy. And then it doesn't work because
Exactly.
So yeah, a lot of good moments. Still a weird episode overall. I still feel that like the mining equipment bit and the dream are just weirdly integrated.
It is strange.
I think it could have used another draft, I suppose.
Yeah, they could have thought of a better solution than, once again, power rings. They can drain energy now, too.
Because that makes sense.
Totally.
Well, with all that said, that's going to be the end of this episode. Feel free to share, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed, and if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, you can always reach us at deepdivezone@gmail.com or at deepdivezone on Twitter. Have a great night, and we'll see you next week.